We want to start off with a reminder that we are not doctors. Before you make any changes or try something new, always consult with your doctor and medical team first. Chronic illness can vary from patient to patient, so it's always best to consult with your own doctor for what is best for you.
Hello and welcome to IBD Determined. I'm your host, Mason Harvey, and I speak from the role of a patient, and I have Crohn's disease.
And I'm your other host, Michelle Harvey. I speak from the role of a caregiver and a mom. I'm Mason's mom, as most of you know. And today we're going to talk about something that would have grossed you out probably 10 years ago. When you used to talk about intestines or stuff like that, you're like, ugh. But today we're going to talk about how the digestive system works and how it can affect malnutrition with IBD. And this is a really, I think, important topic because a lot of us, we've taken classes. I mean, you take lab biology, some have taken human anatomy, you have your middle school, high school classes, and some have gone on in college to take in further courses in this. But most of us don't really remember probably exactly how things work and why having inflammation can be such a big deal. Like what
big problem.
And what makes it such an invisible disease. And so I think it's really important to understand this because it may help you understand out there, why things are happening. And even if you might look okay on the outside, like why
you're not doing well on the inside.
You're not doing well. Yeah. And like why labs are coming back strange or why you're losing weight. And so I think that like for us, when Mason was diagnosed and they said he had malnutrition going on, we were like, but he eats.
Yeah, but he eats. So
and
why does he have that,
Yeah. And so a lot of people probably think, hey, my kid's thin, but he's eating. He must just have really good metabolism. And so you're not thinking as much on it as you really should be. And so it's just important to understand this process and know that, you can eat and you can still be malnourished because of malabsorption. And so that's why today's lesson is going to be really important. So I hope you guys stick with us and kind of follow through. And I mean, I know it's probably not, for some of you, may not be the most exciting topic, but I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think this will probably be one of the more interesting ones.
Yeah.
But
and I think you're going to find out some stuff about you as well in here that
I'm going to learn about myself.
Yeah. And there was something with Mason that we didn't realize till after he was feeling better. And that was he hadn't really ever felt hunger. While he was in a flare and he was just like, it's always like to get him to eat. It's like, why aren't you hungry? And he's like, I'm just not feeling hungry. And I'm like, how can you not feel hungry? And so I think a lot of you parents out there, or even adults, can relate to this, who are going through a flare, or, who knows, maybe you don't think you're in a flare yet, or maybe it's just the IBD, but it can play tricks on you.
Actually, one of the first things that happens when I go into a flare, which strangely hasn't happened the past 2 times.
Yeah, that is
this time and the last time. Well, the last one wasn't really a true flare; it was caused more because of a bacteria infection.
Yeah,
but this one, I think it was more of a normal flare, but it wasn't as bad. But usually, the first sign I have is my hunger.
Yeah,
but
appetite.
My appetite goes away, so I'm not as hungry, which would make sense because when I was in the flare, when we didn't really know what it was, I wasn't as hungry.
Yeah.
So that's one of the first signs I usually get when I'm in a flare.
And then when he started feeling better and he's like, all of a sudden he's like, hey,
I feel hungry.
I feel hungry. It's like, and so no one has really ever explained this to us. It's been mentioned to the doctors, and it's not like anybody has time to take 45 minutes to sit down and explain this process, but I'm naturally curious about it because I feel like there's a connection there. Because a lot of times, malnutrition or IBD patients not eating, it's attributed to their fear of food because it may trigger something, or it's attributed to pain. But, what if those aren't the causes for some of you? And what if you are eating and you're like, why is this, why am I not gaining weight, or why are my labs so bad? So anyways, we're going to discuss this with you guys. And the sources we used for today's episode, we got them from Euler magazine.
It's a very good magazine.
Yes, and so you should check it out. I mean, it's supposed to be for teens. can be for adults,
Mhm.
but it's got a lot of good science information.
For learning.
Really cool. I mean, we enjoy them. And actually, this episode, 'cause this is his dad, Jason, he was
Mhm.
like, oh, you guys should. We were reading it. He was getting his infusion. We were in the hospital. And so we're sitting there and he's like, you guys should do this. I'm like, yeah, I've thought about it, but I didn't know if it'd be like
That entertaining.
but he's like, no, I really think it would. So I was like, okay, we'll give it a shot. So this was inspired by that, and a lot of the information was taken from there. We also use the Cleveland Clinic, cancer.gov, US Digestive Health, National Institute of Health, MUSC Health, and the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. So I will include some links if you guys want to do some of your own research, but that is where we got the information for today's episode. Let's get started, and we're going to start by talking about the upper GI tract 1st.
Mhm.
And so let's start with hunger, because this is where the digestive system starts. You have to eat, right?
Yes, you have to eat.
So I had looked this up because, like I was just saying, I've been curious why Mason did not have an appetite. And I know if you've had a flu, you're not always hungry when you have a flu, and then suddenly when you're feeling better, you're super hungry again. So I felt like there's got to be a connection.
Some sort of connection with what's going on there.
Like if your
Like,
body's not
they
feeling
might
well,
tie together.
and so there is some connection. So I thought this was kind of exciting. And again, I'm going to apologize for how I pronounce things. Probably should look some of these up again.
Attempts were made.
Yes, I try. So how do we know we're hungry? Like, what tells a normal human being without
What makes
Crohn's
you
disease,
feel hungry?
anybody, so what makes us feel hungry? The hypothalamus in the brain tells us we are hungry, and that's what also makes our stomachs growl. So, like, that's what kind of signals you, right? You get that signal. Like, that's why all of a sudden you can be doing your classwork.
Yeah, and
you're
you're like, oh, I'm
working,
hungry now.
and so without even thinking about it, you're like, oh, I'm hungry. And so the information about your stomach, the fullness of it, if it's empty, that travels from the digestive system to the brain. And it does that through nerves and substances in the blood. So ideally,
That's
if everything's, it is. And so in the example I'm going to use, I had found this research and it was through ulcerative colitis, but it can also apply to Crohn's because Crohn's disease can affect the colon. And so I think this definitely applies to both. But the study was on ulcerative colitis. They found that a lack of appetite is much more common in patients with inflamed colons, which you had.
Yeah, I actually did.
Yeah. And a feedback loop to the brain and other digestive organs triggers a change in the hormonal and nervous system controls over hunger and feeling full. So there is a connection between that inflammation and the, what is controlled as far as what tells you when you're hungry or what tells you when you're full. And so that could be why.
Interesting how that affects it kind of.
Right?
Because the colon is, so far through everything, and it's not remotely close to the stomach. So that's kind of interesting how that ties together.
And so that's what the digestive system, that's why I think this is so important to listen to this and learn today from this, because you're going to learn things you didn't realize how they were tied in, and how, hey, this could be a signal of a flare, this could be a signal of inflammation. So
your body is built like a domino chain. Everything, it relies on everything else.
It is kind of like that. And so I was kind of excited because I was like, oh, this is perfect, because I have been looking for this connection for Mason because I was so curious. And so in the findings, IBD inflammation has shown that it impacts two hormones: leptin, which suppresses your appetite, and this ghrelin, I think that's how
that's like ghrelin.
Yeah. And that's what tells your brain when you're hungry. And so the research suggested that if you have an increase in leptin, it is a significant cause of reduced food intake in IBD patients. And that can mean, so if you have something like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, it affects not only a person's ability to digest or desire food, like to want that food, but to their body's ability to experience typical hunger cues.
Interesting.
But once we got that inflammation under control and he was doing better, that was one of the first signs. And so I thought that was really interesting because we've never heard this before.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important for us to know how it is tied to the digestive system. What is the digestive system? So that includes your mouth, throat, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. And so when Mason would meet with his dietitian, she would always say digestion starts at the mouth. And so it starts with our teeth. So she would say to chew food really carefully, chew it down small, because that will start to help aid in digestion. And so an important, tip for people with IBD, chew your food well. And probably the faster you eat, that might be why maybe it may not be as good for you. You have to chew a little slower and make sure that, if you are going to eat something like a peanut or cashews or something like that, if you can, you would need to chew those really well.
Very well.
So that was what she always suggested.
Yeah.
Chew everything well, because that at the time, those were suggestions. Like if he's going to try this, it needs to be chewed really well because digestion starts in the mouth. And so it's like, okay. And so as you're chewing, you have your saliva, and the saliva helps to soften the food that we chew, and it also has enzymes, and those break down the starch that you're eating into glucose. So that process starts in your mouth. So lysozyme is in saliva, and it's something that also helps kill bacteria. So that's part of, so all that is starting, right up at your mouth. It's all starting. And from there, we're going to go to the esophagus. And so, and this is also something interesting because, I mean, you can swallow the food, but from there, you're not controlling it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you're not.
Right? It's a weird, I mean, it's not like waving a hand or moving your foot. It's not like you can consciously sit there and be like, all right, because why does the food not just stay there? Like, why does it not just sit there after?
Kind of natural.
Right? So we can't control the actions of our stomachs and other internal organs. So it's like head movement, arm movement, all that we can control. And stomach's internal organs, we can't. And so after we swallow our food, how does it move along? So there's something called peristalsis, and that's the undulating movement of our esophagus, stomach, and intestines. So they all do this. And so the muscle walls contract and expand, and that is what pushes food down through the system.
Interesting.
And it allows our food to digest. So whether you're standing up or lying down.
Yeah, but you should always be standing up or sitting up while eating.
But if you've eaten something and then you're like, say you're watching TV and you lay down on the couch after, it's not like it's going to just, it's not going to be as good for you, but it'll take more work. But it's pretty cool. So the body knows how to do that. And so some of you may have GI motility issues, and that can affect your digestion. The esophagus is not part of the food absorption process. So that's not where food absorption starts. It's just getting it down to there. But the motility process can be affected. And there's EOE is one of the disorders. There's other things that can be a problem, and even for IBD. So motility is also important with digestion. And so from there, it goes to your stomach.
Okay.
And so the stomach has something that called gastric acids that helps you digest your foods. They can break down complex substances into simple ones. So they turn like proteins into amino acids, and they turn fats into fatty acids and glycerol, and carbohydrates into sugar. And so that all starts in your stomach. That's what's going on in there. So you have all that. Yeah. And the glands in the walls of the stomach produce enzymes that digest proteins and hydrochloric acid. And so the hydrochloric acid kills some of the bacteria and helps with digestion by breaking down food. So again, this food like starts in your mouth, it starts getting broken down, goes through the esophagus, gets in the stomach, and it's getting further broken down, right?
Yeah.
And
it's like a factory line in a car factory. That one machine will add the doors, the other will add the wheels, the other one will add the tires. They all have a different job.
Right? It's like
the car moves forward, they all one big thing.
Purpose. And it's not like they all not like one's more important than the other, or they all have a job. And that's why when something is affected with inflammation or
big deal.
Because IBD can affect any part of the digestive tract. That's why things can be a holdup. It can be difficult.
I think a good way to explain that would maybe be something like back to the cars and the factory. Say the machine that puts in the doors breaks. So now the doors aren't being put in. Well, now the machine that tries to put the glass in the doors,
right?
It's just going to fall and shatter because there's no door to...
The previous process didn't happen correctly.
So now there's just going to be a waste of glass.
Right? So
and the machine won't be able to do its work.
Which is a really good example, because if something isn't working before it gets to the next spot, it's going to be even harder for that one to do its job. If it can do it at all.
If it can do it at
all. So that's a really good example. And that's very true. From the stomach, it then heads into the small intestine. And the small intestine is where nutrients are absorbed into our bodies. And so everything that cannot be digested or used for the benefit of the body is turned into waste and disposed of. But the small intestine is really the main source of our absorption of nutrients. And so this is where malnutrition can happen through malabsorption. It's different because it's not malnutrition through not eating. It's malnutrition through malabsorption, which
because
means
it
you're
can't
eating,
absorb as well.
but the body isn't. And that's why this is so important, guys, because that's why this is an invisible disease, because you don't know if someone is eating, you may not realize that they are essentially still starving.
Yeah.
And that
you can eat and still starve. That's interesting.
it makes and to somebody who doesn't understand how all this works, you may not realize like how that's possible. So that's why this is really important to us and something I think that's worth listening to. So the small intestine, let's kind of go into that because there's a lot to kind of discuss with these. And so as food is processed and transported, it arrives in the small intestine. And this is the main process of digestion and absorption of food takes place. And so the villi is in the small intestine, and each has a blood vessel that transports prepared substances to the liver. So, I mean, that was also interesting because you had hepatomegaly and you had fatty liver and disease. And so it's like, how is the liver? Because that's not part of the actual digestive system.
Yeah, it's not. I guess
it's part of it, but we don't. Not part of it, but
it's not really like considered in the main group.
Right. It's affected by it. So this is another part of the body that can be affected by the digestive system not operating properly, and the liver is very important. And so it can take several hours for this food to travel through the small intestine because they are long. And so it said it's about 5 meters. And if you turn that into feet, that's 16 feet in the whole human body.
That's really long.
Yeah. And that helps nutrients to be absorbed by the body most efficiently because they spend the most time in it. If they're too short, does that make sense?
Which is why you don't always want to get surgeries and you want to try to treat
you want to try to treat the
Crohn's
disease
or
without just
colitis.
removing part of it.
Yeah.
Because
don't go straight to surgery.
Unless
your doctor wants to, yes.
But that's why biologics are important because you're preserving these parts. So because the more time that this food can go through your system, the more nutrients are taken out, the more your body is going to be healthier through all of this. So it's really important.
Yeah. It's also different with colitis because you only have to remove a part.
The colitis,
well, there's different
ulcerative colitis, is the colon. So that is a different removal. But yes, there's other things with Crohn's. Things can happen. You can get strictures.
The problem with Crohn's is even if you do remove a part, you're going to have to keep removing them because it's going to keep coming back. So pretty soon you're not going to have an intestine.
Right, which we're going to kind of go into in a minute.
Okay.
What that leads to, but you're right on it because you understand this. So, I mean, it's not to say it's sometimes, unfortunately, this is obviously biologics aren't the best for you either, but you have to weigh the benefits of surviving and thriving. And so sometimes if surgery is the option, that is the option at a certain point. But as long as you can keep those small intestines intact, that would be most efficient for you for nutrition. And so the first part of the small intestine is the duodenum. And I mean,
I remember talking about that.
You had inflammation there too. I heard all these terms and I thought, wow, how many body parts does he have inflammation in? And it's like, you don't really realize it's like, okay, so the duodenum is part of the small intestine, but that's actually the first part. So that's a major site for an absorption of iron.
Oh.
Okay. And
that's what I was low on.
Right.
That's what I had to take. I had to take iron pills and iron.
You had blood transfusions.
Blood transfusion.
And so, I mean, and again, not a doctor, guys. I know you all know this. I say this all the time.
Not a doctor. We're
but
just
this is
going
in your
off of
studies,
articles.
What we've looked up and researched this very well for you guys to find this information. That does not mean any of you should go be taking iron and doing anything on your own.
No.
You speak to your doctors first.
Talk to your doctors.
Yes, that's not what this is about. Yeah. This is just to kind of let you know how things function.
Yeah. And if you don't like what your doctor is doing, you still don't listen to us because we're not doctors. You get a second opinion. You get a second opinion.
Right. But you can take our information and use it to help you guys have more knowledge about how your bodies
You can actually, if you think something, you want this or that, because we recommend it, we're not, you shouldn't do it still, but you can tell your doctor, like, I think this and this, and, you can suggest it to them to have an idea or something and see what they think about it.
Or at least if your doctor's talking to you and says, hey, this is what's going on, instead of you feeling like, is my doctor know what he's talking about? I mean, you might go like, hey, now this is starting to make sense to me, because it really helps if you can understand things when the doctor is explaining things to you.
So
Like,
they're not just talking in science.
right.
to
It's
you.
like a separate language. And you're like, what are you saying? So
What's a duodenum?
yeah. And so I think that's, that's important. So yeah. So like we said, the duodenum is the first part of your small intestine. And so its main job is to transfood the partially digested food it receives from the stomach into nutrients your body can use. And so, I mean, and there's a lot of things it does. It goes there's way more into
There's
detail.
a
Even
lot more.
your red blood cells, everything function as a part of this absorption process. Things are so important here. But some of the notes that I just put down, like digestive juices from your liver, gallbladder, and pancreas empty into your duodenum. And that helps with digestion and absorption. Basically, it just like we said, helps to absorb nutrients, whether that's vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, all the things that your body needs, and along with water. So it's a huge part of why you can eat really well and be doing all the right things, and
It still doesn't work.
Right.
Because I actually have heard duodenum a lot. Especially when I was diagnosed, I heard it a lot. But I never knew it was the first part of the intestine. I didn't know that. So I learned what that was.
Right. So you probably thought I have it somewhere else.
Yeah, I was like,
but it was in the intestine still. And so the jejunum is the middle part of the small intestine. Okay. And so that's a major site for absorption of like folic acid. And it primarily absorbs carbohydrates, amino acids, fatty acids through the villi. And so it's just another helpful process of the food digestion and the middle part of the intestines. So just like the duodenum, it absorbs the nutrients.
That's
and
interesting
water
because I
from
thought,
food.
I mean, obviously I'm not researching intestines and stuff, so I'm not going to know a ton about them. But I kind of just thought they were there to
transport food, waste.
Yeah, but also I thought they all just did the same thing, they slowly took out whatever vitamins and nutrition, whatever. But there's each separate parts, like on a car line, right? And they all do separate things.
Right.
Like when I brought up the car thing, I meant specifically like one part of the car line would be the stomach and one would be the intestine, big intestine, throat, whatever.
Right.
But it turns out the intestines itself is its own factory.
Yeah, because the small intestine is there's so many feet in this. And so that's why it's so important for the food to really go through all of it. So it's getting out everything it needs as it's going through, and it's really like cleaning it and getting exactly what you need. And so that takes us to the ileum, which is the last and longest part of the small intestine. The ileum is the most important site for absorption for bile acids, fluid, and vitamin B12. And so the ileum takes nutrients that have been unabsorbed in the first two parts, the jejunum and the duodenum. And so it takes those and continues to absorb the rest of it. So it helps you it's like a full process, start to finish.
Yeah.
Yep. It's like, that's the end, checked everything off. And but it serves an important purpose. So this is where we're going to talk really briefly. We're not going to go too far into this because this is like a whole nother discussion, but kind of like what Mason had brought up earlier, inflammation or things like having surgery on your intestines. And so that the way they said is it accelerates intestinal transit. It's not absorbing because the inflammation, it's not going to absorb it correctly. Or if you've lost part of your intestine, if they took out 3 feet, you're going to not have 3 feet so it's going to go faster through it. So it's not going to be able to get as many of the nutrients. So that can lead to malabsorption. So if it is moving through everything faster, it limits the contact time with the mucosal surfaces of your intestine. And so that's what leads to malabsorption because there's less contact time with it. It needs that contact and that to extract everything. When it doesn't do that, it's not extracting it. And so that's going to result in a greater stool volume and other restroom issues that are very common with this disease. And so malabsorption involves the damage to the mucus lining of your small intestine. And if any of you have had scopes, you've seen these lovely pictures.
Images.
Yeah.
Images that you can't unsee.
I know.
Burned into your minds.
I know. The thing you've always like, please don't show me. And the doctor's like, check this out. You're like,
no. Then she has to see it. Like, please.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's something.
It's something else.
But yeah, so there's something also called short bowel syndrome, and that's a condition in which the body cannot absorb enough nutrients from foods because parts of the small intestine are missing or damaged. This is why biologics they're so aggressive with them because it prevents this damage that can lead to short bowel syndrome. And then it can also help prevent surgeries that can also take out intestine that lead to smaller, time for the food to move along the tract and be absorbed.
Interesting.
And so, so that's why your small intestine is so
important.
And so now we're going to move from the small intestine to the large intestine.
Large intestine.
And so, but before we're going to start talking about large intestines, I also want to just kind of throw this out here because we mentioned the liver, we mentioned the gallbladder.
Mm-hmm.
And
now we're getting to those.
Yeah, so just to throw it out there, so the liver tests substances from the small intestine for harmful components and neutralizes them so they can't hurt your other organs. So this is why it's important that your liver is functioning correctly. And bile is produced by the liver, and this helps break down fat into smaller, easier to digest sizes. So that's kind of the role that it's like it's a helper to the digestive system.
Yeah,
and it's important, but it's part of it.
It's like backup.
And like
bile sounds familiar.
Yeah, you've probably heard of that as well. I mean, you've learned about these things in school briefly, but this is more, much more intense session on it. And then, the gallbladder. I think some people a lot of times these are removed, kind of like the appendix. People have these removed because they're having problems. But what does the gallbladder do? Like when no food is in the small intestine, the bile is stored in the gallbladder. So
seems important.
Yeah, so it's like a reservoir. It helps,
whenever you need it, it's there instantly.
I feel like I don't want to act like this is the only thing it does, but this is what we're covering in relation to IBD today. And so from the small intestine, we're going to head to the large intestine. And here's something interesting to me, okay? I feel kind of like I didn't know this. The large intestine is also known as the colon.
The entire thing.
So
okay.
So it's made up of the cecum, colon, and rectum. And so when people refer to the colon, you're referring to the large intestine.
I did not know that. I thought
right?
Okay, I did not know that.
Again, you're probably picturing large intestine, colon.
Yeah,
right?
It's two different parts, but apparently it's all the same thing.
And so the large intestine has thicker walls than the small intestine and larger chambers. It's bigger, right? And while the small intestine is where the main digestive processes take place, if it can't perform its function, the large intestine is there to help. So it comes in for the assist. And so again, this is where if your small intestines aren't working quite right because your inflammation, if you also have an inflamed colon, now you are in trouble again because it's trying to help the small intestine, but it also needs help itself.
Everyone needs help.
Right. So this is why this disease also, I think, can really vary because some of you don't get it and some of it stays focused in different parts of the body. Mason had it everywhere.
That's great for me.
Right. And for some of you out there, you also had the same situation. And some of you may have only had it in the small intestine. Some may have only had it in the duodenum. Some may have had it in the stomach, but eventually with this disease, it can occur really anywhere. So interesting to know, right? So the large intestine absorbs water from undigested food remains. So this was really cool to me. So a total of 9 liters or about 2.4 gallons of liquid pass through the digestive system every day.
Wow.
2 liters of food juices, 1 liter of saliva, 2 liters of stomach acid, and 4 liters of the small intestine's digestive juices. This all passes through there. And this liquid is returned to the body through the large intestine. So dehydration, right? This is another thing.
Yeah, so if your large intestine or colon is not working,
right,
you're going to be dehydrated.
You could be dehydrated. And that's also something they always tell you, drink a lot of water, do these things. And so if it's not returning that liquid back to the body, you're losing that. And that could also be why when you go to the bathroom, it's a lot of fluids coming out. It's not working correctly. Right. And so inflammation prevents the intestinal lining from absorbing enough fluids and nutrients to keep the body healthy. And so same as with the small intestine, that can happen with the large. And so instead of undergoing absorption, water leaves the body as watery, runny stools.
Description.
So, yes, we're going to say that. I know. I'm like, we're just going to leave it at that. But that's, it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Neat. I don't know.
Interesting, yeah.
To know why, right? Because these things are happening to you and
but you don't know
like
where
mystery.
Or why.
You're like, what's going on? And so that could make sense why you're having certain symptoms or having certain things, because it's important to see the symptoms and understand what it could be coming from. So you can develop dehydration if you don't take in enough water and electrolytes to replace those lost in bowel movements.
That's why you should always drink water.
So very important. And that's why one of the things they give all you guys, if you end up in the hospital, they give you liquid. You know, you get an IV and they start putting liquid into you, and to get your levels back up so you're not dehydrated. Dehydration is really not good on the body either. So it's all part of that malnutrition kind of thing going on. And so maybe you're drinking a lot of water, maybe you're eating everything and you're still having problems, and it's because the body might be just kicking it all out and not taking what it needs and not putting it back into the body. So I think it's pretty cool though. I mean, it's incredible how these intestines work, and they're so efficient. Like the small intestine knows its job, and then the large intestine
have their
like,
own jobs.
I have my job, and it's like, I thought it was like, it's so smart. It takes everything, like, instead of like, it's like the best recycler ever.
Yeah.
Like instead of just like throwing everything away, the large intestine's like, ooh, I'm going to take all this liquid and redistribute it to the body. And I thought that was really, it's like, how smart is the body? It's incredible.
Well, it's really smart, apparently.
Yeah.
It's
So
really
some of
smart.
you know all this stuff and remember it, but I just like relearning again so I can understand.
I learned for the first time about this stuff.
And I think it would have been helpful. I mean, it would have made so much more sense when you were diagnosed.
Yeah, to know what's going on.
Yes, because I was so confused on like, well, he's doing all these things right. What is going on?
Yeah, what's wrong?
And so now it's like, oh, okay, this is making more sense. And I think that it may make some sense to you guys and help out. And I have here a fun note. The appendix is at the end of the large intestine, and it kind of looks like a worm, like in the drawing. I am not sure, which gross. I'm not
Here
like,
we go.
yeah. I was like, but
YouTube's gonna cancel us.
appendix. I was like, I pictured, like, I don't know what I was picturing, but it wasn't that.
I don't know why, but I picture the appendix as a bone.
Right. Yeah, it's
like attached, like the femur or something.
Yeah, no,
like that.
no. So the appendix is at the end of the large intestine, and that helps eliminate harmful bacteria in the intestinal tract and serves as a refuge for friendly bacteria.
Oh.
So sometimes people are like, "Oh, appendix doesn't have any purpose." It's
yeah,
but it's like,
it does.
It's like, I mean, maybe it's not a super important purpose, and you can survive without it. A lot of people have their appendix, they're removed.
But it still has a purpose.
But it has a little purpose there, and it does. I mean,
don't make your appendix sad. Don't say it's useless.
Well,
sad.
I think we have these images, and I don't know where we get them.
The funnest part is trying to show those pictures with YouTube not canceling.
It's not like that graphic.
Yeah.
I would like just a drawing, like a rendering of it.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting about the appendix. And then also there's something else we hear about, which is the microflora, the flora in your gut. And I know one time, because you had your scopes, one of the times you flared, and they think that's because they flushed out when you're doing that, through the clean out, and then
you get rid of all of it. You get rid of all the little happy little guys.
Right. And so what is microflora? And the digestive process is largely dependent on friendly bacteria in the intestines, like your microflora. And most of them are found in the large intestine and help prevent the spread of harmful bacteria. They help the body synthesize vitamins B, D, K, and E is what it said, which again, I just read this. And, but they also neutralize harmful compounds as well. So the flora, the microflora, that's why there's a lot of, I know supplements out there, people take stuff to keep the flora healthy in your body. And so there is good bacteria, and it helps with the bad bacteria.
Not all bacteria is bad.
Exactly. It's very true. And we're not always taught. You hear bacteria, you think, oh, bad. But no, not all the time. So anyways, that is our quick rendition of the digestive process. And
there's a lot more that we didn't cover. So.
I thought this was so important to me, because it was something that I had questions that have never really been answered.
I think that was really interesting too.
Yeah. And I think it's like, it started clicking, like, oh, this is why Mason wasn't hungry. Oh, this is why
it all makes sense.
Yeah. I'm like, it does. It really. And so I think it can only help empower you with this disease to understand it more and kind of take the mystery out and just think, oh, my body's just malfunctioning. It's an autoimmune disease. It's this, it's like, yes, but why and how? What is happening? And so I think it may help a little bit to know, like, this is what's going on. And
it may comfort or Not.
I know. I don't know. I feel like
So
it's,
you know what's going wrong, and
yeah.
not just
I
blindly.
don't want it to bring anybody stress. That's not the idea. I
No.
hope not. But I hope
It's a
for most
learning
of you.
experience.
Yeah. And especially the parents out there, you can understand if you have someone newly diagnosed, you're having all these things thrown at you, and there's some confusion. I mean, this is just a great reminder. Or if you're listening to us because you haven't been diagnosed yet, these are great things to know because
To
it's
look for.
important to notice and to take care of it and keep up on the doctor and make sure that you're getting the care you need and understand how important it is for your digestive system to work properly. It's a big deal. So anyways, I hope you guys found that interesting. And I really did. And I and I know you did too. I
learned quite a bit from it.
Yeah,
I
that's
hope
why.
you learned a bit too.
Yeah, just research everything and try to find credible. It's like writing a research
from
paper.
reliable sources.
Yeah, and so just so that we can put it all together and kind of connect the dots and help you guys better understand the human body and how IBD, malnutrition, malabsorption can work, and how important it is to understand that the digestive system has important jobs to do. So, so with that, guys, we will leave you with that, and you
Fun
can
episode.
follow us on Instagram at Team IB Determined. And we went this week to the San Diego Blood Bank and kind of threw like a
little Halloween party.
We put everything on a cart. We went to all the different, we went to the main headquarters where the labs are. And we just to thank everybody
For what they do,
Yeah.
Most the least we can do.
Yeah.
For saving my life.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other people's lives,
Right. It's like there's so many. I mean, the donors are incredibly important, but the staff and everyone behind the scenes who makes it work. And
you may have people willing to donate blood,
but you
need the blood bank to do that.
Right.
And you may think the blood bank is just taking the blood and putting it in a vial and storing it. But there's people calling, there's people unloading the trucks, there's people who
the whole center where they process the blood, clean it, like go through it.
Scientists, there's so many people involved.
Just like we have a whole episode on that, and I encourage you guys to learn more about the blood bank because
support your local blood bank.
Some of you may have not needed a blood transfusion and some of you will need one. And so I think that's another helpful process to understand and to know the importance of, because you never know when you'll need it. So we had some fun. We went to the main one in San Diego, and then we went to our local one up in Vista to thank donors. And that was another great site as well. We really just had a good time. So go ahead and check us out. We also went to the Legacy Foundation.
Oh, that was fun.
Yeah, so that's on there too.
Food.
Yeah.
Fish and steak.
You like the sea bass. So
sea bass, good.
Yeah, so you'll be able to catch up. We had a great week. It's been a really good
week.
Good with fundraising, good with meeting volunteers and donors. So just a really cool week. So you can check us out on Team IB Determined and catch those adventures and the Reggie Project.
The Reggie Project.
And also, you guys, if you're listening to us already, you probably know, but we're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and
there's a lot more connected to those. The Buzzsprout will be linked in the description.
Right. So you can see every station where you can find us. And
then there's YouTube podcasts, which is
we've been
still kind of new.
Listening. Some of you are listening through, you might be listening right now through YouTube, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Just run around and listen to YouTube. And if you do want to watch us, we're not just on the YouTube podcast, we're on the YouTube videos too. So if you want to watch us and hear us, you can go to the YouTube videos. And if you are already watching us, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to be notified every time we post a video, make sure to hit that bell icon.
We'd love to have. We've been at 89 subscribers.
89 subscribers. That's so good.
That's
us, a big deal. That's a big deal.
Right. Like for our goals, that means 89 of you have subscribed, and
because you found our channel cool.
Yeah, and so we've been here for. It'd be really cool to get to 90. I want to see every time I keep checking. I'm like, is it there?
Yes, is it there? It needs to be there.
Well, one of you guys subscribe so we can finally go to that 90.
Peace.
It would be kind of cool to see it change.
And please comment. We love reading your comments, we read every single one of them.
Please, let us know how you're doing. Let us know,
how you're feeling right now. What led you to find this podcast? What interested you in this video?
We're here to support. We're here to listen and just kind of, make sure you're not alone. You're not invisible. And we'd love to hear from you guys, whatever it is. So please do, like I said, comment. And we will see you guys again in 2 weeks, and we'll have some more adventures for you guys. But if you follow us on Team IB Determined on Instagram, you'll see first before the next. You'll see where we've been.
Yes,
So.
you'll be excited.
It's exciting.
Yes,
So
it is very.
thank you for listening, guys. Have a good day, good week, good
good
everything.
Full day, break, whatever. Special day, I don't know.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon.
Next episode. Yes.
Next
Bye.
episode. Bye, guys.
We hope you will stick around, tune in, and reach out to us with your own journeys. We are excited to give you an inside view of what it takes to be a caregiver and what it's like to be a patient.
And most of all, we hope you'll maybe be able to apply something you hear on here that might help you in your own life. Sometimes life changes, and it's all about how you handle the journey.